What's up, guys? Noah here with The Arc, and today I want to talk about a way we can understand our negative emotional responses and manage them in a healthy and effective manner. Let's get started. You ever felt yourself feeling frustrated, angry, anxious, all of that at once, and you're not really sure why, but you just know that you feel that? Or maybe you think you know why, but you're still feeling the same way and it's not fun, right? If you answered yes to any of those questions, congratulations, you're a normal human being and you experience normal emotions in this crazy journey that we call life. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the excessive and prolonged experiencing of these negative emotions, which is actually super common nowadays, it's not only bad for your emotional and mental health, but it's bad for your physical health too. And not to mention, it just plain sucks.
Well, this sucks.
Now, before we get into deep, I want to clarify something. I am not saying that you can simply think your way out of clinical depression, clinical anxiety, or any other form of mental illness. I myself struggle from a variant of obsessive compulsive disorder, so believe me when I say that I know how frustrating it is when people tell you to just stop thinking that way. However, what I am saying is that there are things we can all do, whether we struggle with clinically exaggerated emotional responses or not, to take control of the reins on our emotions. So after this, you might just be able to call yourself an emotional cowboy. So, how do we do this? Well, the key to understanding really anything, but in this case, managing our emotions effectively, is to understand how they work and where they come from. One school of thought, which comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, asserts that maladaptive cognitions contribute to the maintenance of emotional distress and behavioral problems. So, in English, our thoughts influence our feelings, which influence our behaviors, which influence our thoughts, and then begin that whole process again. Now, contrary to how this might sound, this is actually very good news because it means that our emotions are the byproduct of the thoughts that we think. So, if we can change the way we think, change the way we see things, or like our perspective and whatnot, we're essentially putting ourselves in the driver's seat of our emotions, rather than being a passenger at the mercy of whatever happens to us in this crazy life.
That actually makes sense.
However, if you're anything like me, this is way easier said than done. This is because our brains are like dirt and our thoughts are like water. As our thoughts run a certain way, they tend to take the paths of least resistance. Over time, they erode the dirt down into channels and paths that get deeper and deeper, which make it easier to continue down that path every time our brain starts leaking out thoughts. Now, these are what scientific folk call neural pathways, which are essentially the paths that our thoughts are used to taking anytime a given thought is triggered. It's essentially like our mental knee-jerk reaction to anything that happens. So, the trick to overcoming this is to call upon what I like to call a brain beaver. Essentially, you have to build a mental dam, just like a beaver, in your unhealthy neural pathways in order to redirect the flow of your thoughts into a much less distressing direction. It'll be highly unlikely that you'll be able to control the initial flow of thoughts. However, you do have the choice of whether you build that dam or not. So here's a brain beaver that you can use when you start to feel anxious, frustrated, or anything in between.
This is the way.
Imagine with me, if you will, the following matrix, known as the personal power grid. In any situation, it's important to know that there are things that we can control and things that we cannot control. And by the same token, we have the ability to respond by taking action or to not take action. When we choose to take action over things that we can control, like making time to go to the gym when we've committed to doing so at the start of this new year, we find ourselves in the box of fulfillment. When we choose not to take action over things that we can control, like procrastinating studying for a test, we find ourselves in the box of anxiety or avoidance. When we choose to take action over things that we cannot control, like trying to change another person's attitude or behavior, we find ourselves in the box of frustration. When we choose not to take action over things that we cannot control, we find ourselves in the box of acceptance, bringing us inner peace. Now, something that I want to point out here that's super important to remember, it's that influence and control are two very different things. Influence does not equal control, okay? We have influence over everything around us, but there are very few things around us that we can control besides ourselves. Despite the fact that this will always yield negative emotional results, for whatever reason, all of us tend to live in the box of either frustration or the box of anxiety all the time. We do this because subconsciously we fool ourselves into thinking that we have control over things that really are very much outside of our control. The emotionally healthiest boxes to live in are, oh, I'll bet you guessed it, the boxes of fulfillment and acceptance. Typically when someone is living in one of these boxes, they're actually simultaneously living in both.
How can somebody be in two places at once?
It's the principle or the idea, the attitude of it is what it is, you know, do your best and forget the rest. Emotional distress comes from trying to fight reality and refusing to accept it. Accepting reality is not the same as judging it as good or favorable. Just like forgiving someone doesn't necessarily mean that you trust them again.
I forgive you.
Now, what accepting reality is mentally and emotionally letting go of the things that are beyond our control. This includes, but is not limited to, other people and really just the world around us in general. So this is great and all, but how do you actually use this brain beaver? You know, because I can talk about this all day and you can learn it, but it doesn't do us any good unless we put it into practice. Well, whenever you're in a situation where you feel, negative feelings start to boil up, just ask yourself, do I have control over what I'm getting worked up about? If you do something about it. Figure out what you can do about it. And if you don't, then let it go and don't worry. Or worry, but know that worrying is as effective as trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubblegum. Peace out. Thank y'all for watching. If y'all want to continue to learn about how to empower yourself in your relationships with principles and concepts that are true and actually work, click on one of the videos right over there. Also, if you know someone who could benefit from watching this video, please share it with them and make them watch it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook at real.noahs.arc and hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see y'all next week.